In the strict prison system of California, where violence and power dictate all, two organizations, Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia, have risen as notorious forces. Emerging from the Mexican-American community, they not only represent survival in a harsh environment but also symbolize two opposing ideologies: discipline and unity versus domination and violence. Nuestra Familia calls itself, our family, a brotherhood built on loyalty and mutual protection. Meanwhile, the Mexican Mafia, known as LAIM, synonymous with ruthless domination, uses fear and strength to assert absolute authority. These two organizations clash not only within the prison system but also bring profound divisions to the Mexican-American community. Highlighting geographic, cultural, and ideological differences between Northern and Southern California, their rivalry is not just a typical gang war but a decades-long conflict impacting both the justice system and society at large. What turned these two organizations into sworn enemies? And in the shadows of the prison system, what truly transpires? Let's uncover the stories hidden behind these cold steel walls, where loyalty, power, and blood have written history. Part 1. Objectives and scope of influence. In California's prison system, Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia have emerged not just as criminal gangs but as two forces with deeply contrasting goals and spheres of influence. These differences, rooted in geography, culture, and ideology, have sparked an unending war between the two organizations. Nuestra Familia, the spirit of protection and unity. Nuestra Familia, meaning, our family, was established in the late 1960s. This organization was formed to protect Mexican-American inmates from Northern California against oppression from other gangs, particularly the Mexican Mafia, which originated in the South. Initially, Nuestra Familia's objective was merely survival in the prison system. However, over time, it evolved into an organization with ideals centered on defending the rights and dignity of Northern California's Mexican-American community. Primarily comprised of agricultural laborers. Mexican Mafia, power and domination. In contrast, the Mexican Mafia, also known as LAIM, was founded in the early 1950s with the aim of imposing power within Southern California's prison system. The Mexican Mafia represents a ruthless strategy: eliminate anyone who opposes them. This organization not only controls activities within prisons but also quickly expanded its network beyond, creating a criminal empire with influence far exceeding that of other gangs. Contrasts in scope and strategy. The scope of Nuestra Familia's activities is primarily confined to Northern California, focusing on agricultural labor communities. Their loyalty is built on a spirit of protection, treating their community as an integral part of the organization. This creates a strong bond between the family inside and outside the prison system. In contrast, the Mexican Mafia, with its extensive network, operates not only in Southern California but also in neighboring states like Arizona and Texas. Instead of community solidarity, they impose authority through violence and intimidation, even against their own people. This method enables them to dominate a broader area but also generates many internal enemies. Root causes of conflict. The division between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia is not merely geographical but also cultural and ideological. The North's emphasis on unity and community protection starkly contrasts with the South's violent and domineering approach. These irreconcilable differences have led to perpetual conflict. Their war extends beyond the prison walls, spilling onto the streets where they vie for control over communities and the black market. Part 2. Organizational structure and operational strategies. The differences between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia are not limited to their goals but are also evident in their organizational structures and operational strategies. From internal hierarchies to methods of operation, these two organizations have chosen contrasting paths to establish their dominance in the underworld. Nuestra Familia, iron discipline and tight unity. Nuestra Familia operates like a true military organization. It has a clear hierarchical system, with generals at the top, followed by captains, and then soldiers. Every member is required to abide by a strict set of rules known as the 14 Bonds, emphasizing loyalty and absolute obedience. These principles serve as both a guiding doctrine and a stabilizing force that ensures unity even when facing larger adversaries. The operational strategy of Nuestra Familia prioritizes internal control before external expansion. Within prison walls, members undergo rigorous training in discipline, strategic thinking, and underground activities. This focus on organization helps maintain cohesion but also limits their scalability. Particularly in larger, more diverse communities. Mexican Mafia. Flexibility and domination through fear. In contrast, the Mexican Mafia operates with a far more flexible structure. Key members, referred to as carnales, brothers, act as central leaders. While the organization does not enforce stringent rules like Nuestra Familia, it relies on fear and violence to maintain authority. Members are allowed considerable autonomy as long as their actions benefit the organization as a whole. This flexibility allows the Mexican Mafia to expand its influence rapidly, both within and outside prison walls. They do not hesitate to use violence to coerce smaller gangs into submission, creating an extensive power network. However, this approach also introduces a higher risk of internal conflict. As members are not tightly regulated, strategies of confrontation and expansion. Both Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia employ distinct strategies for confrontation and power expansion. Nuestra Familia focuses on protecting and consolidating power in the north, drawing strong support from agricultural labor communities. On the other hand, the Mexican Mafia aims for comprehensive domination, extending from prisons to major urban areas like Los Angeles. While this strategy grants them control over more resources, it also makes them a prime target for law enforcement agencies. Comparing structures and strategies. If Nuestra Familia represents discipline and focus, the Mexican Mafia embodies flexibility and ruthless dominance. Each organizational style comes with its own advantages and challenges. Nuestra Familia's unwavering loyalty and internal stability ensure their strength but hinder their scalability. Conversely, the Mexican Mafia's expansive network allows them to command significant influence but exposes them to internal strife and resistance from smaller gangs. Part 3. Main sources of income and levels of violence. When it comes to maintaining financial resources and employing violence, Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia showcase two entirely different approaches. Both organizations leverage their control inside prisons and beyond to build resources. But their financial strategies and use of violence have distinct characteristics. Nuestra Familia, focused on discretion. Nuestra Familia's primary source of income comes from drug trafficking, particularly methamphetamine, which is prevalent in Northern California's rural communities. Members of this organization are also involved in extortion and controlling illegal businesses in their territories. But they prioritize discretion to avoid alienating the local community. The ideals of Nuestra Familia emphasize protecting the Mexican-American labor community in the north. This not only ensures loyalty among their members but also limits the level of violence used in their operations. However, this approach slows down their expansion and reduces their competitiveness against the Mexican Mafia in larger markets. Mexican Mafia. Violence for domination. In stark contrast, the Mexican Mafia is unhesitant in employing violence to maintain power and maximize profits. The organization dominates the drug trade not just within prisons but also on the streets. With operations spanning Southern California and extending to states like Arizona and Texas. Beyond drug trafficking, they profit from extorting smaller gangs and taxing other illegal enterprises, making them a formidable economic force. The Mexican Mafia uses violence as both a political and economic tool. They are unafraid to carry out public acts of brutality to instill fear. From dealing with traitorous members to punishing rival gangs, a mere nod from the carnales can result in the immediate death of an inmate, showcasing the absolute control they wield. Comparing levels of violence. Nuestra Familia is known for its severe punishments for members who break rules or betray the organization. While their violence is often focused internally, their methods are ruthless, serving as a deterrent to others within the group. On the other hand, the Mexican Mafia employs violence openly and mercilessly to assert power on a broader scale. This not only reinforces their position but also sends a clear message to other organizations. Anyone opposing the Mexican Mafia will pay the ultimate price. Differences in financial and violent strategies. The contrasting approaches to finances and violence shape the nature of these two organizations. If Nuestra Familia is a discrete force patiently building power through loyalty, the Mexican Mafia is a ruthless wolf, ready to tear apart anyone in its path. While both capitalize on the prison system to sustain their operations, their methods of managing finances and deploying violence highlight their stark opposition. Part 4. Relationships with the government and society. Scope and influence. When it comes to relationships with the government, society, and their overall scale and influence, Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia are forces that cannot be underestimated. However, their approaches to dealing with authorities and impacting their communities differ significantly. Nuestra Familia, a hidden shadow in the community. Nuestra Familia rarely engages in activities aimed at manipulating the government or judicial system. They maintain a quiet yet effective presence within the Mexican-American communities of Northern California. Members often have strong ties to family and friends in the area, creating an image that is both intimidating and familiar. This allows Nuestra Familia to retain covert support from the community, even though most residents do not openly acknowledge their existence. Nuestra Familia is also known for recruiting from rural farming communities, where values like loyalty and solidarity are deeply ingrained. This deep connection with the community enables the organization to maintain control over a specific region but limits their ability to expand their influence into larger urban areas. Mexican Mafia. Public manipulation and societal fear. In stark contrast, the Mexican Mafia openly employs aggressive tactics to manipulate the system. They are infamous for bribing and intimidating prison officials, law enforcement, and even judges. These actions enable them to control many prison systems, derail investigations, and coerce witnesses into recanting testimony or disappearing altogether. In society, the Mexican Mafia spreads fear through acts of public violence. Brutal assassinations or punishments serve not only to eliminate enemies but also to send a clear message that they are a force that cannot be challenged. This power extends beyond prisons into urban communities, where they dominate densely populated areas such as Los Angeles. Scale and influence. In terms of scale, the Mexican Mafia far surpasses Nuestra Familia, with a network extending from Southern California to states like Arizona and Texas and even across the Mexican border. They control a significant portion of the underground market in the western United States. Their influence permeates both prisons and urban communities, particularly in major cities where smaller gangs must abide by the rules of the Mexican Mafia to survive. In contrast, Nuestra Familia operates on a smaller scale, focusing primarily on Northern California. Their concentration on rural farming communities and tightly controlled internal structure allows them to maintain dominance in the north but limits their ability to expand beyond this region. Differences in relationships with the government and society. Nuestra Familia adopts a hidden strategy, avoiding undue attention and exerting influence through community ties. Meanwhile, the Mexican Mafia takes a more confrontational approach, directly challenging both society and government, making them a powerful force but also a primary target for law enforcement. Long-term impact. The differing approaches of these two organizations not only define their operations but also shape how society and the government respond to them. The Mexican Mafia frequently faces large-scale crackdowns from law enforcement due to their overt activities. Meanwhile, Nuestra Familia remains an elusive shadow, less visible but no less dangerous, continuing to operate under the radar. Part 5. Strengths and weaknesses. Endgame and legacy. Every criminal organization has its strengths and weaknesses, which shape its history and position in the underworld. For Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia, these attributes are not only factors of success but also risks that could lead to their downfall. Nuestra Familia. Strength through discipline but limited in scope. Strengths. Nuestra Familia's defining strength lies in its strict discipline and the unwavering loyalty of its members. Its military-style organizational structure ensures stability, even in the harshest conditions. The system of rules, known as the 14 Bonds, guarantees that every member acts in the collective interest, helping the organization avoid the internal conflicts often seen in other gangs. Weaknesses. However, this structure also serves as a vulnerability. Reliance on a few key leaders and rigid principles makes the organization susceptible if these leaders are arrested or betray the group. Additionally, their limited operational scope in Northern California and focus on rural communities reduce their potential to expand influence into larger urban areas. Mexican Mafia. Overwhelming power but prone to division. Strengths. The Mexican Mafia derives its power from its extensive scale and remarkable ability to manipulate systems. Its flexible organizational structure allows it to adapt quickly to changes within the prison system and society. Moreover, its strategy of exerting control through public violence enables the organization to maintain dominance over a wide range of territories, from prisons to major urban areas. Weaknesses. However, this flexibility also brings significant risks. The autonomy granted to members often leads to internal disputes, betrayals, and purges. Their excessive use of violence attracts substantial attention from law enforcement, making the organization a prime target for crackdowns. Endgame. Who wins the never-ending war? To this day, the war between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia remains unresolved. Nuestra Familia maintains its presence in prisons and Northern California communities but struggles against the larger influence of the Mexican Mafia. Conversely, the Mexican Mafia continues to dominate prisons and urban areas in the South but faces growing challenges from law enforcement pressure and internal instability. Legacy. The marks they leave behind. Nuestra Familia. This organization leaves a legacy of unity and iron discipline. They are a symbol of resistance and loyalty within the Mexican-American communities of Northern California. However, this legacy is accompanied by an image of isolation and limitations in expanding influence. Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia embodies power and fear in the underworld. Their far-reaching influence has shaped how gangs operate both inside and outside of prisons. However, their legacy also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and internal division. Lessons and future outlook. The story of Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia is more than just a tale of two criminal organizations. It's a lesson in loyalty, power, and the consequences of unchecked violence. Both organizations face significant challenges ahead. Emerging competition. New gangs with modern organization and technology may disrupt their dominance. Government crackdowns. Stronger law enforcement efforts will continue to target their networks. Internal pressures. Younger members may stray from the core values that have sustained these organizations. Two opposing philosophies. Who is truly stronger? The battle between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia represents more than just a conflict. It's a clash of philosophies in building power. Based on scale and influence, the Mexican Mafia dominates with a far-reaching network both inside and outside prisons, especially in major urban areas. Considering internal stability and loyalty, Nuestra Familia stands as a model of disciplined structure and tight control. The answer to who is stronger may never be definitive, as each organization has its distinct strengths and weaknesses, reflecting their unique operating philosophies. A war without end. The decades-long conflict between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia has left profound impacts not only within the prison system but also in society. It symbolizes the divisions in geography, culture, and ideology within the Mexican-American community. Looking ahead, both organizations face looming challenges. The rise of new gangs with innovative approaches, increased enforcement efforts aimed at dismantling criminal networks, internal pressures from younger generations who may reject traditional values. Regardless of how this battle concludes, the legacies of Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia will remain etched in the history of American organized crime. Their story is one of power, loyalty, and the price paid to survive in an unforgiving world. What has enabled the Mexican Mafia to maintain such extensive power over the years? Can Nuestra Familia's loyalty-focused strategy sustain them in the long run? How might this ongoing war evolve as society and law enforcement intensify their scrutiny? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and join the discussion about this intense rivalry. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more compelling stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.